great. It's coming.
Okay.
Great.
So now we're there.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
So it's a real pleasure. It's an honor for us to be in front of you today. And let's say with no further ado, let's go straight to the presentation. So Zubida, please, the first slide. The first one, yeah, thank you. As you can see on this map, Quebec is quite active all over the world, and we have 33 offices in 18 countries on 4 continents. And today we'll insist on Europe, but I think it was of interest to show you the map. In Europe, we have a pretty strong presence. Paris being our flagship with a yeah, thanks. Paris being our flagship with a full diplomatic representation there. But we also have an important office in Brussels, which I have the honor to lead. So next slide, please. So we're in Brussels since 1972. I lead a group of 20 people. And as you can see on the slide, those are our objectives. And we're promoting Quebec there. So in all the Benelux region, but also in front of the EU institutions. We're also fostering trade and economic relations between Quebec and the Benelux countries. And I will insist on this second bullet. So next slide, please. We have a trade and investment division that promote trade between Quebec, Benelux, and EU companies. So we provide information and a great deal of support to Quebec companies seeking to do business in the region. As you can see on the slide, we have supported 184 companies in 2019-2020. That's the last full year, pardon me. A thing that is important and that is of importance today is the fact that we also work very closely with local companies. When I say local, I mean companies that are active in the Benelux. So we support them and we give them some informations on our market, our products, our technologies. And we also provide information on opportunities related to business partnership in Quebec. I must also insist, no, the other slide, please. Just, no, come back a little bit. Yeah, thank you very much. I want to insist on the last bullet because we also monitor changes in the EU economic policies. And right now we're devoting a lot of energy on following and working on the carbon border project. You're probably also following this subject because it will be of importance, and we all know that the EU wants to put in place the carbon border as soon as 2023. So we do follow this subject. So next slide, please. In the last 5 years, and I could go back as far as 2007, but in the last 5 years, my colleagues and I have devoted a lot of our time on CETA. You're probably aware of the fact that Quebec has always been a land of free trader and remains a real gateway to the North American continent. So I have myself devoted a lot of time on the ratification process. There's a majority now of EU countries that have ratified. There's a lot of work to do in the Netherlands, for example, or in Belgium, but we're looking for a positive outcome. I will share with you 2 important numbers related to CETA and related to our trade between Quebec, Canada, and the EU. If you look at the 2 full years of implementation, so 2018 and 2019, there was an increase of 12% of exports from EU to Quebec and Canada, and in the other way, the increase was 6%. So as you can see, it has been quite good for EU companies. Next slide, please. I must insist on the fact that our mandate is to promote our interest, but we are also there for EU companies, and we can offer you a privileged access to the Quebec market, and we work very closely with the other government offices in Europe. We have an in-depth knowledge of the Quebec economic system, and we can also refer you to potential partners, so partners to support your investment, or business partners that could reach a deal with you to develop and to support the entry of your products in Quebec and in North America. We have a pretty good network, and we work quite closely with other government agencies like Investissement Québec. And speaking of Investissement Québec, it is my pleasure to introduce Louise Thibouteau. And Louise, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Pierre-Luc. Thank you, Delphine, and thank you, EUCCAN, for this amazing opportunity. Good morning or good afternoon to everyone. Today, I'm going to talk to you about Investissement Québec, Investissement Québec International, the Quebec economy, and the benefits for international companies to conduct business in Quebec. Investissement Québec International is a new division within Investissement Québec. We were officially created in June of this year as an integrated division of Investissement Québec. By doing so, the Quebec government wanted to integrate within the same organization the resources dedicated to industrial research and innovation, foreign investment prospection, exports development, and the financing of all projects, be it from homegrown companies or international companies. By doing so now, Investissement Québec globally is a 1,000 employee organization with 30 offices in Quebec and 12 offices abroad. Our mission, is to actively participate in Quebec's economic development, stimulate innovation in local and international companies, to support also the development of new businesses, so from creation and development. Our role is essentially to support by advising and financing projects, by prospecting foreign organization, and supporting exports development. Investissement Québec is essentially the financial arm of the Quebec government, and our financial solutions range all the way from loan guarantees to equity positions within companies, and we support projects and businesses of all sizes at every stage of the project. But we never work alone. We always work with private and institutional financial partners to make sure that companies can raise the capital that they require for their projects. Next slide, please. Strategic orientation, well, I believe that anyone who is quite familiar with international business development understands that it starts with attracting a foreign organization to do a first investment in our province. Then we make sure to support these organizations so that they keep on improving on their competitiveness and productivity. We support local and foreign organizations in their exports development. We want to make sure that we complement the gap that may be existing in the capital chain, and we help organizations globally move forward. Next slide, please. I mentioned earlier innovation and competitiveness. In Quebec, the privilege, or I should say the dedicated organization to support organizations doing that is what we call the CRIC, or the Quebec Industrial Research Center. CRIC has 2 specialized laboratories, one in Quebec City, one in Montreal, with teams of multidisciplinary experts. It is essentially a toolbox with proven tools and methodologies to meet companies' needs. CRIC has recognized certifications so that they can truly help companies moving forward in their productivity and innovation. They offer three main services: technology development and support, industrial innovation, and simulation test and analysis. And for each and every one of these lines of services, they have, different formulas, but certainly what they also have is very specific deliverables with companies. Next slide, please. So moving forward, I will explain in more details everything that has to do with FDI and why companies should consider setting up in Quebec. And my colleague, France Nadzil, will touch on the exports component of this. So attracting FDI, as I mentioned earlier, starts with an initial decision. And this is the most important one, and when we make sure to provide all the necessary support to companies so that they can make a very educated assessments of Quebec's advantages. We also, once a company has set up, we make sure to provide very efficient aftercare support to foreign organizations through their subsidiaries. And it is very important to us to provide that support because historical data supports the fact that although foreign organizations are only 1% of establishments in Quebec, they create 10% of our jobs and are responsible for 20% of our GDP. So it is not to be under considered. Also, a new responsibility for Investissement Québec is our program on talent attraction. This is something that several regions in Quebec have been very proactive doing, and I would perhaps mention the role of organizations like Montreal International and Quebec International doing that. But now through Investissement Québec International, we will be offering that level of service to all the regions in Quebec so that talent can be available in all the provinces. Next slide, please. We've been doing a pretty good job at attracting FDI in the past few years. The past 3 years, we've had historical performance. Last year alone, we attracted 86 new projects in the province for a value of 2.9 billion and created and or maintained 8,500 jobs. Europe has been a significant contributor to that success, with 43% of all projects coming from Europe and 48% of all investment value. So it is quite significant. And despite COVID-19, this year's figures are very promising. We do expect to hit new record figures. And so we're quite happy about that. In terms of industries, I think that for all of Canada, we're a very diversified economy, but specifically for Quebec, we've been very successful attracting investment in IT, which is inclusive of everything from gaming, VFX, software development, e-business, fintech, you name it. Agri-food has been quite a significant investor, and also metals and mining. I'll touch on metal and minings later. And transportation. Montreal and Quebec is a very strategic player in everything aerospace and transportation. Next slide, please. Although we're a large 1,000 people organization, our investment arm is very lean. So we have our VP. I personally, as senior director, oversee the work of my colleagues who are responsible for the key markets. So Zubida, who maybe you'll see her face later in the presentation, she's the one who's very kindly accepted to do the slide changes for us this morning. She's responsible for all our European operations. We have someone for the Americas and Asia Pacific and the Middle East. And we're supported in doing that by two colleagues. One who is responsible specifically to work with all the regions in Quebec outside of the Montreal metropolitan area and the Quebec metropolitan area. So all regions in Quebec can benefit from our expertise. And we also have a team that is responsible for business intelligence to make sure that we are more aligned with the opportunities in the different markets and the fit with Quebec's capacities. Zubida, as responsible or as director for the European market, also has the responsibility of administering basically our initiatives in 5 key cities in Europe and regions. So we have offices in Paris. We have someone responsible for Brussels, who works closely with Pierre-Luc, and thank you, Pierre-Luc, for the continued support in our role. We have someone in Munich, London, and someone also responsible for Stockholm. So let's talk a bit more about Quebec, so we can move right away to the next slide. Quebec is a province of 8.5 million inhabitants. It's the second largest province in Canada. Montreal is the most populous or metropole of the province. Quebec City is the second largest city. Interesting fact to mention is that in regions like Montreal, 55% of the population is bilingual. In all of Quebec, it's 45%, and 20% of the population in Montreal is trilingual. Also interesting fact, after Toronto, Montreal is the second largest concentration of English-speaking professionals. So when companies are looking at areas or regions in Canada where they could conduct business with professionals who are at ease in communicating in English, this is not a concern in Montreal. So moving on to the next slide, Quebec is very well connected to the world. We have 3 airports. In terms of flying time, we're 60 minutes away from cities like Boston, New York, and Toronto. And we're halfway between Europe and the west coast of the United States. So this creates a very unique positioning, and we are a very friendly business environment. In terms of supply chain, as you may have heard, but I think it's worthy to mention it again, Canada is first in the G7 countries for performance of clearing goods. So when companies want to capitalize on the free trade agreements, the next slide please, it is a very strategic location for companies. Also worth mentioning, the Port of Montreal, which is the second port in all of Canada for container traffic, and it is first in Eastern Canada. So Vancouver, of course, adding significant traffic considering its strategic location with Asia. Let's talk now about some financial considerations and costs. Next slide, please. The obvious things that companies or costs that companies need to analyze when making a decision or doing a feasibility assessment. Of course, there are the operating costs like labor, energy, rent, but also cost of living for their employees, as well as, quite important, what is the corporate taxation situation, as well as incentives available. Next slide, please. In terms of competitive operating costs, cost of living is something to be considered, because Montreal, when looking at all the large cities in Canada and the United States, is the most affordable, and it comes way ahead of cities like Tokyo, Stockholm, or Paris. If you look to the right side of the slide, looking at labor, electricity, and real estate, the top line is everything US, and the bottom section is the G7 countries. Well, the one thing that is quite stable is the fact that Quebec is always more advantageous. Our costs are significantly lower than all of these geographies. But this could not happen without talent. So I'm glad to say that Montreal and the province of Quebec has a very skilled talent pool. In terms of access to new talent, Montreal is the best student cities in the Americas and 6th in the world. Quebec and Montreal, it's Canada's university capital with 11 institutions and 60 colleges. Just in Montreal, it's 35,000 international students attending our universities. But the rest of Quebec is quite successful at attracting international students as well. In all of Quebec, it's 87,000 foreign students that once they graduate can benefit from an automatic work permit in our province. Not only can companies, have access to the local talent pool, but the foreign student population as well. So I'll move on to the next slide, please. Last but not least, energy. When looking at everything manufacturing, it is a big trend that now companies are quite sensitive about, their impact on the environment. whenever a company is operating in Quebec, they benefit from our hydroelectric production capacity, which is 99% renewable and green. It does explain why so many data centers have set up shop in Montreal and in all the province of Quebec, and why Quebec is little by little becoming a major leader in everything electrification of transport, be it recreational vehicles or mass transit. And we have a unique access to resources in terms of the minerals required for battery manufacturing. In terms of specifically the incentives, our effective tax rate is 26.6%, which compared to other large cities is quite advantageous, but also the tax credits that are available in the province of Quebec are exceptional. Companies benefit from a tax credit of 45% on cost of acquisition of their manufacturing and processing equipment. In terms of e-business, this is mostly for software development and everything web-based. It's a 30% tax credit on salaries, which is essentially a subsidy. For multimedia titles, which is everything gaming, it's 37.5% of salaries that is eligible to a tax credit. And also, and this is why so much research is happening in Quebec, is that because Quebec is the only region in Canada where companies benefit from a fully refundable tax credit from the Quebec government, in addition to the federal tax credits that are available in all of Canada. Other tax incentives for large projects, companies can benefit on their corporate taxes of a 15% tax credit on corporate taxation. Foreign researchers as well, talking about R&D and how intensive this activity is in our province. One of the reasons is because scientists benefit from a personal tax break when doing research in Quebec for a company operating in Quebec. As you can see, it's 100% tax break of their Quebec taxation the first 2 years, and then it goes down, but it's a 5-year program. Also for companies that want to invest significantly in improving their manufacturing capacity and updating their equipment, it's 100% depreciation for the year of acquisition of all these equipment. So it is something major to be considered. But all that talent that companies wish to recruit in our province or transfer to Quebec can have access to not only a very advantageous situation in terms of their living conditions, but also an exceptional quality of life. Montreal, of all the 20 largest cities in North America, is the safest. We have the lowest university tuition fees. So that's why so many youngsters can attend university education. We have a universal daycare program for all families that they can benefit from, and also a very universal healthcare systems. Healthcare costs these days, I think we know very well how important it is to have access to good healthcare. So in Quebec, it's a universal program. But also I would mention that the fact that our energy is so clean and affordable does impact on families' quality of life, because in some regions, families have to dedicate a significant amount of their budget for energy, which is not the case in the province of Quebec. Housing is accessible as well to families. So it is possible for a family to reside at a very reasonable distance from their place of work, or even walk to work, which is very trendy. I know that in a lot of European countries, this is what people look for. It is possible in Quebec to have that quality of life. And just to give you, it's just a quick comparison. The red side is just some of the costs in Quebec cities, and to the right, other Canadian cities. All this to say that it remains very affordable. So I'll move very quickly because there's a lot of sectors that Quebec is very dynamic, and it's a very diversified economy. So first, let's talk about aerospace. Aerospace is at the heart of a global industry, as you know. The Quebec aerospace industry is responsible for 50% of the industry sales in Canada. 70% of all R&D activities in aerospace is conducted in Quebec, and 80% of all exports are coming from the Quebec companies exporting out of Quebec. You know, looking at the names of these companies, so many of them are quite familiar to all of us. You know, all these companies, 5 are prime contractors, 15 are equipment manufacturers, and 185 strategic suppliers. So when setting up the Quebec companies, global companies, they know that they will find all the expertise they're looking for. Next slide, please. So this is just to showcase the fact that it's a continued investment pattern that's happening in the aerospace industry, and the Quebec government is committed at supporting this industry and helping them, you know, so that after the current situation, they're all in good positions to continue their development in our province. We have a very diversified ecosystem. I already mentioned the names of a few companies. We have specialized research centers and a lot of university programs, but I would want to bring your attention to the international organization part of this slide. You know, it is a fact that ICAO and IATA, which are 2 of the most prestigious international organizations in aerospace, have their global headquarters in Montreal. They are in the company of 63 other international organizations, and Montreal is a UNESCO recognized city for attracting international organizations. So in North America, we're part of a very small, let's say, circle of UNESCO cities, together with Washington, D.C. and New York. And other international organizations that may be familiar to you, the Anti-Doping Agency is headquartered in Montreal, and so is the Institute for Statistics for UNESCO. And to close on the aerospace and aircraft manufacturing, I spoke earlier about how important clean power and clean economic development is to the Quebec government. And so there is an initiative, which is a partnership between industry and government in Quebec. It's called SA2G, and it is to develop the aircraft of the future, which would all be electric. Next slide, please. Let's talk about something that we all love, good food and agri-food. So in Quebec, there are 2,400 companies doing food processing, hiring 70,000 people, and the type of products that are manufactured in Quebec, you have the full spectrum, as you can see, from bakery, beverages, dairy products, fruit, vegetables, and all of this. And this is just a sample of these companies that are international in their scope. Many names you're familiar with for sure that are large and very global European companies. And I would just perhaps just mention the most recent investment that was announced just last week. Kraft Heinz has confirmed a major project for its Montreal plant, which is the only plant that Kraft Heinz has in Canada. It is in the Montreal region, and they've committed to investing even more in this plant. Research and development centers, I will go very quickly just to mention to you that there are strategic initiatives to support food processing companies in developing new technologies to improve their products and their offering to consumers. Next section talks about electric and smart vehicles. This is nothing new for Quebec. Along with California, Quebec is the driving force for electrification in North America. Quebec has the largest fleet of EV passenger cars in the country. And so this is something that we're quite proud of. Next slide is to talk about the fact that we have a very well-structured cluster for electric transportation in the province of Quebec. It's called Propulsion Quebec. They work hand in hand with the Quebec government to make sure that all the 650 suppliers to the industry have the best possible conditions to keep on developing. out of these 650 suppliers, you know, they are quite active in developing and manufacturing electricity buses, school buses, delivery trucks, recreational vehicles, charging stations, cathode materials, and cell and battery parks. Blue Solutions as a plant on the south shore of Montreal, which they've been investing year after year to improve their capacities. Battery is in its next slide, please. Is something, you know, as we all know, a very significant component of the electric vehicles. And Quebec has a very unique positioning due to the fact that all the critical battery minerals are present in our underground. And we're right now in discussion with several world leaders in the battery manufacturing area to find, you know, to develop partnerships with them so that they could benefit from this unique advantage in Quebec. But talking about batteries, some people may think that electrification is trendy and new, but it's not the fact in Quebec. This has been developing for more than 40 years in the province of Quebec. So this is a long-standing tradition. So we have the know-how within Quebec companies, and foreign companies that are setting up can access very highly skilled individuals to work with them. Going on to technology and innovation, I'll touch just on a few subsectors of tech, one of them being AI. You may know that, or you may have heard the name Yoshua Bengio before. Together with Yann LeCun and Jeffrey Hinton, they are the three experts of everything AI in Canada, and I would say worldwide. Mr. Bengio, you know, was the winner together with Jeffrey Hinton of the Turing Award in 2018. For those of you who are not familiar, this is the Nobel Prize for Computing, and he's the scientific director of MILA, which is the AI Research and Initiative in Quebec. And also worth mentioning is that although his two counterparts have decided to move to the dark side, Mr. Bengio is somehow quite a visionary and has decided to remain within academia to help support the development of talent in the province of Quebec. Next slide, please. He's not alone. You know, there are several world-renowned experts in AI that are working in Quebec. This is just a sample of a few of those. So some may be familiar, but the most recent one to join the powers of, I should say, the experts in the field is Irina Risch, who was at IBM T.G. Watson Research Center for the past 10 years and has just joined in the past few months the MILA Center with Dr. Bengio and all the other ones. So we have in Montreal an AI ecosystem that is quite vast. Just to name a few names, you know, Google Brains has an AI research lab in Montreal, so does IBM, Microsoft Research, Samsung, and Ericsson. And the Canadian government has selected Montreal to be the headquarters of Scale AI, which is the Canadian AI cluster for everything logistics and supply chain. So I mentioned already, next slide, please. A few centers, I mentioned Dr. Bengio is associated with MILA, but there's also Ivado and Scale AI that I just mentioned. So there's expertise in Quebec for everything that is natural language processing, machine learning, reinforced learning, automatic speech recognition, deep learning, and computer vision. And everything, you know, voice recognition, Quebec has a long-standing tradition of doing research in that field. Nuance Communication, that you may see as one of the key companies in the AI ecosystem, has been doing AI voice recognition for more than 20 years, but through acquisition, I should say, of homegrown companies that were in place for the past 30 years. So it's a deeply rooted ecosystem in our province. And companies doing AI research in Quebec can access expertise in 20 centers of excellence, and companies can, first get started through a location in any of the 30 incubators that are present in our province. I think this says it all. Look at these names. So those are just the companies that have set up in our province in the past 36 months to access the AI expertise in the province, and more are on their way to announce, opening of AI centers of excellence in our province. Moving on to the next industry or sector, it is fintech. So fintech is quite significant in Montreal. It is one of the top major financial centers that is quickly growing in North America. The Quebec City area is a well-known center of excellence for insurance. EY has its own center of excellence for insurance and actuarial services there. And Lévis, which is on the south shore of Quebec City, is home to Desjardins, who is the largest federation credit union in the Americas. Moving on to the next slide, we have a strong financial ecosystem, and I mentioned earlier several tax incentives, and there's one specific to IFC activities that is administered by Finance Montreal, and this has been quite instrumental in attracting some of the companies that you see the names mentioned in the bottom part of the slide. Overall, it's 7,000 companies in the financial ecosystems, 145,000 jobs in the industries. The next slide showcases more companies, but as I mentioned, there are several others. But what I wish to mention to you is that we have expertise through these companies in mobile, electronic payments, cybersecurity, AI, big data, financial software development, and cryptocurrencies. Just like for other industries, just wish to show to you that, several companies in the financial services area have decided to have development centers in the province of Quebec. The last two ones that have announced opening centers, one of them is Trading Streams, that has a significant presence in London and New York, and as well as Tokyo, has opened a technology center in Montreal. And so did Paytm, the Indian headquartered company that has announced the opening of a center to develop mobile payment technology in Quebec. One area that is a lot of fun, but it's serious business, the video game industry. Of course, we have a very large cluster. It truly is a hub. We have 11,000 jobs, and just to let you know, to what's called 200 studios, the largest one being the flagship studios of Ubisoft that has more than 4,000 employees in Montreal doing game development. But Ubisoft is not alone. There's a lot of competition for the talent, because if you look at the next slides, you'll see a lot of other names we have over time developed with several institutions, very specialized training programs, as well as we have attracted a lot of companies that develop technologies and services specifically to game development. And in looking at the names, once again, of several companies that have a footprint to do game development in the province of Quebec, I would mention that, a few names that say everything essentially. Epic Games is in Quebec, so is Take-Two, Eidos, Ludia, Ubisoft, NetEase, Activision, and we're proactively seeking the others that are not yet there in our province. Next slide is about VFX, because I would hate myself for not mentioning that there are 35 VFX studios in Montreal, and out of those 35, 9 have set up shop in the past 2 years alone. So there's a very significant trend in VFX activities being transferred to Montreal to capitalize on the talent. Next slide, please. So of these companies, once again, if we want to look at European companies that have committed in opening, you know, VFX studios in Quebec. You know, the four major ones are there. DNEG is there, Framestore, CineSlide, and MPC, and they're serial reinvestors in our province. And I believe this is the last industry I'll touch before passing on to France Nadine for a section. Life sciences industry has a long-standing tradition in our province. We have 5 schools of medicines. In total, next slide, we have 650 companies involved in this industry. So we can truly cover the full spectrum from bench to market, through biopharma, manufacturing, CROs, medical devices, and natural health tech products. It is 56,000 jobs that are specifically in life sciences and 10,000 researchers. You see world leaders on the next slides. Most of them are European headquartered companies, so you may be very familiar with. Next slide, as I mentioned, there are 650 life sciences companies in the province of Quebec. This is just a sample because we just could not fit all of them in one slide. We have, you know, innovative biotech companies as well. I would bring your attention to the one on the right side of the slide, Medicago. You know, during currently the search for a vaccine for COVID-19, Medicago is one of the leading biotech companies with their unique process of you know, plant-based vaccine development. And they have a strategic agreement with Mitsubishi Healthcare in this development. So in order to do that, you need to have CRO organizations. There are 70 different CRO organizations in our province. Those are some of the key ones. Some of them are European, others are Americans, but these are the key ones. And in terms of manufacturing, we have capacities to, of course, doing research, but doing generics manufacturing, biomanufacturing, dermocosmetics, and active ingredients. So a lot is happening in Quebec. This is a quick overview. I assure I could keep on going for quite a while, but out of respect for everyone's time, I will let my colleague France Nadine take over. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Louise. Good morning or good afternoon for most of you. It's a pleasure to be here. Since CETA came into effect in 2017, bilateral trade between the European Union and Quebec has increased significantly. This means that CETA has a positive impact on our economic exchange between the EU and Quebec. For now, the EU has had more benefit from this agreement, but we believe it's a matter of time before we catch up. The EU is Quebec's second commercial partner regarding imports and export, just behind the US. As you can see on this slide, 32% of the EU export to Canada are going to Quebec. Quebec is thus the main entry door for EU firms to Canada. Also, note that 5 European countries are among the top 10 exporting to Quebec. The same goes for our export, the EU 28 being the second region where Quebec's exports are sent to after the US. And within the EU, Germany and France are the main destination export points. As shown here are the Quebec's top 5 goods category of products which are imported and exported from and to the EU. Most of these are value-added manufacturing goods, such as the suppliers of the aerospace industry sector. Being an open economy, Canada has several free trade agreements. Here are the 3 main ones. Altogether, they represent almost 1.5 billion consumers. Here is a briefing of 2 of them, CETA and the Canada-US-Mexico Agreement. CETA has advantages advantages for the European and Canadian firms. Here we have some examples. Lower or zero tariffs, staff mobility, access to public tenders, and many more benefits. For EU firms, taking advantage of the CUSMA could be interesting to develop the North America market. Being by owning or opening an office or a plant in Quebec, or through a partnership with a Quebec company which could act like as a subcontractor. These are two example open opportunities to EU firms. Remember that thousands of Quebec enterprises have a direct access to the US market with distributor, warehouses, and or representative. CUSMA create advantageous conditions for SMEs and maintain Canada preferential access to the US and Mexico markets for good. A startup in innovation is a great way to launch a new partnership with Quebec firms. Quebec has a solid and growing research and innovation ecosystem with strong support for research, company scale-up, and innovation. In 2017, the Quebec government launched a national strategy for research and innovation. The Quebec government supports key players in the innovation ecosystem, especially by helping them to integrate a global network. Quebec has a research and innovation attaché dedicated to European relations at the Quebec government office in Brussels. This attaché in Brussels is a testimony of the importance given to the collaboration with the European Union. Since 2013, 34 research projects, including at least one EU member country, have been found. Several European countries have chosen to open an economic offices, governments, or national trade association in the province of Quebec. This present is significant because it emphasizes the importance of our commercial relationship. If your first wish on the market is to export, here are some interesting partners to support you in your effort. Investissement Québec International maintains close relationship with all of them, mainly located in Montreal. Investissement Québec International target is to help Quebec firms in developing their businesses abroad. Quebec hopes to increase international and interprovincial export significantly in the next 5 years. In order to do so, Quebec's government export services have been merged within Investissement Québec International, which is now the focal point for services to Quebec enterprise with regards to export and global expansion. Our strategy focuses on identifying, preparing, and supporting Quebec companies with the best prospect for exporting. From evaluating a company export potential to preparation and coaching to market identification, we cover all steps in the export process. The expert at Investissement Québec provides customized support to SMEs and large corporations in their initiative to develop markets outside Quebec. As Mr. Desgagnés told you, I just want to emphasize that Investissement Québec works closely with colleagues within the Quebec government office in Europe, particularly the trade division. You already know their services, so do not hesitate to contact them. Thank you for your interest and your time. Hope to share your business soon. Now I will let Mr. Gagné take over.
So as you can see, we're all passionate about Quebec development, and it was a pleasure to be in front of you. And I must add something to all the things my colleagues just said. But if, for example, energy or electricity is at the center of your decision or will be a center part of your decision, you must look to Quebec because the tariff and the quality of energy are probably, and not probably, are have the most quality in North America. So just have a look at it. That being said, because we're all passionate, but because also we all like to spend a good life, and because I would say that probably in Quebec you can live and let live, let us finish with a pretty nice video showing our quality of life. So, Zubida.
Thank you very much. It's quite refreshing to see these kind of videos with the difficult time we are going through. But yeah, thank you very much to Louise, France Nadine, and Pierre-Luc for this very exhaustive information we got today. We have just 5 minutes left. I have one question, but again, to all the participants, feel free to ask all your questions. I think it was very we have a very deep understanding of what Quebec can represent. So I will ask the question and then I will add mine. We have a question on who are the main employing companies of Quebec. I guess whether it's foreign companies or local companies. Maybe Louise, you can give us a little bit of insight on this.
Oh my, yeah. There are so many in all industries, you know, the largest of all of them. Quite honestly, I don't have the answer. I should have that, but give me 1 second and I'll give it to you. But, you know, in Pierre-Luc may have the answer.
Yeah, I think I can help you. The most important employer would be the Mouvement Desjardins, which is a financial institution. Hydro-Quebec, which is the energy company, would be another one. CGI or CGI, which is an IT company, would be probably part of the 10 most important employers. Jean Coutu, which is a pharmaceutical company, will also be within the 10 most important employers. And you must remember that the aeronautic cluster create, if I do remember well, almost 40,000 jobs in the Montreal area. So that's quite an important employer.
Yeah, and again, I mean, Louise, you mentioned a lot of, I mean, we've seen a lot of company names in your presentation, so I guess it's also part of all the recruiters, let's say, in Quebec. So if we move to my next question, because as the European Chamber of Commerce, this is a question we often have. It's on regarding immigration and for example, let's say a EU company wants to come and settle in Quebec. What is the advantage in terms of immigration to either bring skills from outside or from their staff from their European branch? So is there any specific program on that?
Yes. Pierre, would you like to touch on that? I could say the specifics regarding, you know, technology companies and all of this, but if you want to give the general.
No, go ahead, and I will say a word after.
Okay, so Quebec has its own system, you know, because no matter where in Canada, each and every one of the provinces must conduct, you know, when employing someone, conduct a labor market analysis. Quebec, it's autonomous in its own LMAs, so we can decide which are our priorities in terms of sorts of position and industries where, so that we can align basically the immigration process with the needs of Quebec companies. So this is part of the process in Canada. From a company standpoint, what I would like to mention are strategic worker, and I touched on this earlier, that foreign students, when they are studying in any Quebec institution, can be granted, they are granted automatically a work permit in our province. And oftentimes when companies do set up and wish to transfer strategic workers to our province, they process through an initial temporary work permit, which has then the advantage of giving full freedom to the families to decide whether, for example, if there are children involved, if they want to attend private, public, French or English school while they are under that first phase of temporary work permit. So it is something that initially when setting up companies see a big advantage of seeing that. And then one other benefit is that it is easy to conduct intra-company transfer. If an employee is already working for an organization, no matter where in the world, it's almost automatic. They could almost literally just show up at the expo with a letter from their employer and they would be granted the work permit. But from a North American standpoint, what is interesting is that if an employee is working within a Quebec operation, if at any point in time the company wishes to transfer these workers to their US operation, it would be easy to do that. There are agreements between the US and Canada, whereby a year working in the Quebec operation, the employee could be transferred. It's a streamlined process to the US operation. So oftentimes, considering the situation in the US, companies see that, you know, it may be a way to accelerate their talent acquisition globally for the Canadian and Quebec needs, but as well for the global North American needs. So I would mention that. And very quickly, Pierre-Luc, you were very good. I've looked at the numbers, the names of the top companies. You were absolutely right. I would say that in terms of companies, well, Bombardier is one of the top ones, of course. Québécois and large companies, Royal Bank, Rio Tinto, CGI, you were absolutely right.
I did my homework.
Of course, I should have.
Great.
But on immigration, if you have anything to add, you know.
Yeah, no, I of course. I mean, that's good to know.
Yeah, there's a one very, very important element is that when an employee is granted a work permit, they have an automatic work permit for the spouses that has no restrictions, which is unique to Canada. You know, it's not possible in other countries.
Yeah, indeed. And thank you for the mention of for the US market, because indeed it's interesting for EU companies who would like to also extend to the US from Canada. And this is something we always explain to the EU companies, that Canada can really be a base for them to develop the investment or the company in the US. Because I want to stay mindful of the time, it's 11:02 already. So thank you very much, Louise, France, Nadine, and Pierre-Luc. To all the participants, you will receive the presentation and you will have all the contacts of our speakers and even of their teams. So don't worry, you will receive all. Feel free to contact them if you have any project in Quebec. And yeah, to all the participants, next week we are going to Saskatchewan, and don't forget also we still have British Columbia on the list, and Northwest Territories, Nunavut and Yukon. And again, thank you very much, Louise, France, Nadine, and Pierre-Luc for today's presentation. It was very exhaustive, it was really clear, and I think it gives a really clear idea of what Quebec is. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great
And good night from the Grand Place in Brussels.
Yes. Thank you very much. Have a great day or great evening. Thank you.
Thank you.